Sleep No More is an immersive theater experience that reimagines Shakespeare's Macbeth in a 1930s noir Hitchcock setting. It's a profoundly human experience that heightens some of our strongest emotions. Immersive theater is so unique because it's so challenging to get right. To be immersed as the audience, you need to be able to let go of yourself, your inhibitions, and flow naturally through the experience. As effortless as it feels to be carried along through the dream of Sleep No More, a lot of intricate design and clever choices went into the creation and evolution of the show. I'm going to delve into the design elements that make Sleep No More so effective as an immersive experience, but I'll avoid major plot spoilers in case you manage to see it in the next month. As of this recording, the show is set to close at the end of September. So come, you spirits, and let's explore the design of Sleep No More. Immersive theater breaks down the traditional stage audience barrier, inviting the audience to inhabit the performance space. Immersive theater includes the subgenre of interactive theater, which you can think of like Evermore or Disney's side quests and character events. While interactions with the performers can certainly enhance immersion, they aren't necessary. Sleep No More manages to create intense immersion with only rare, obvious performer-audience interactions, but it is the subtle interactions that bring the experience to life. Sleep No More was created by choreographer Maxine Doyle and punch-drunk artistic director Felix Barrett. It's a show set within a block of old warehouses in the Chelsea area of Manhattan. These warehouses were painstakingly converted into a 5-story theatrical labyrinth called the McKittrick Hotel. The 25 actors, known as the hotel's residents, enact through dance a reimagining of the stories of Macbeth and the Paisley witch trials. The residents are spread throughout the hotel, and the 400 members of the audience, known as the visitors, are let in small staggered groups and are free to enjoy the hotel as they choose. The entire performance is a bit over 3 hours, and it's composed of 3-hour-long loops, culminating in a grand finale, with multiple subplots unfolding simultaneously across the hotel. The entire performance, if viewed sequentially, would span over 8 hours. So there's no way to see everything, and that's kind of the point. This impossibility is a key part to the experience, adding to the intrigue and mystery. The overall design goal of Sleep No More is to transport the audience to a dreamlike state. Just like a dream, this is a story for your gut instead of your head. Unlike a nightmare or a haunted house, the audience is merely an observer of the darker elements, bearing witness and nothing more. Long after the visitors depart, these residents endlessly roam the halls and woods and buildings and grounds. To transport the audience into this immersive, haunting mindspace, the entry itself is very intentional. The audience, or visitors, line up outside a large brick building, unmarked but for a placard, the McKittrick. Small groups are let inside and check into the hotel at stylized front desks. The front desk concierge checks your ticket, bags and coats, and gives you a pouch to lock your phone in. They ask if this is your first stay at the McKittrick. They then give you a physical playing card, like so, and invite you to find your way to the Manderley Bar to relax and enjoy the evening. You head up a dark flight of stairs and enter a blackout curtained path through disorienting switchbacks, feeling your way back and forth through the dark, beginning to wonder how far you've gone or where you are. This disorientation is just what it takes for your emergence into the Manderley Bar to simply pop. You find yourself in a 1930s hotel jazz bar. There's a live band with a sultry singer, cocktails or shots of absinthe. It's such a cozy place that you could just spend the evening there. Forget about the horrors that await you upstairs. Now, I've heard that depending on if you tell the hotel receptionist downstairs this is your first time, the playing card they give you can lead to interactions with the secret residents hidden amongst the visitors in the Manderley Bar. I didn't get this when I went through, but maybe because it was my first time. In any case, you'll have around enough time in the bar to grab a drink before the number on your playing card is called, and it's time to make your ascent. A hotel staff member leads your group to the base of an elevator, and fully in character, with the kind of charisma, camp as an art form, that I can only imagine sourcing in New York City. They tell you the rules for the evening. First, you're given a mask, and you must wear the mask at all times. Everyone has the same mask, and it has these elastic straps on the back. Second, the residents are not to be disturbed. Don't touch anyone. Otherwise, you may observe and explore as you choose. Finally, he kindly tells you that if you find it all to be too much, you're welcome to head back to the Manderley, have a drink, and a talk. The hotel staff in the black masks, the stage managers, are there to help. Now, everyone dons their masks and goes into the elevator. It stops on a floor, and a single random person is unceremoniously shoved out, and the doors are shut behind them. Then the rest of the group is led out on the next floor, and the real adventure begins. That's a lot of steps just to enter the main attraction, but each step in their order is important for setting the tone. So I drew this convenient tension vibes graph. So here's the line outside. Nervous excitement, lots of people talking. So here's the line outside. Nervous excitement and lots of people talking and taking pictures. Here's the hotel-style check-in, kind of eerie and unsettling, but not tense. Here's the black curtain maze. It's okay at first, but it gets tense once you realize just how long and dark it is. So here's the Manderley bar. Whoa! Then relaxing, you can put your guard down. Everyone is having such a nice time. The hotel staff talk, mysterious again. The elevator, anticipation. The random person gets shoved out and abandoned. Oh shit! You're released into the hotel. Ah! These changes in tension set you up to be ready for anything to happen in the main event. They build the anticipation, similar to the pre-ride shows in a theme park. These entry steps aren't a straight line up in tension like a roller coaster, because they need to last for a while to really immerse you in the 1930s hotel vibes, and sustained tension would be exhausting. The steps order works well too. For example, you lock your phone away before you enter the black curtain maze, so you're not tempted to use it as a light source. You get your masks from the elevator staff, not the concierge. So the eeriness and depersonalization of the mask is a stark transformation upon the entrance to the real show. Each part of the entrance is a small step that brings you farther from the noise and lights of Manhattan and closer to the eternal night of the 1930s hotel, whose residents find no rest. You've donned your mask and been thrust out into the drama. The lucid dream has begun, but what will you do now? You come upon a small group of residents enacting a scene. One of them darts off into the darkness. Do you follow? There are two key parts to the more obvious, visible design of Sleep No More: the actors, or residents, and the sensory vibes. From the start, you're able to observe the residents, but what is so intriguing is the bounds of what might happen to them are unknown. You will likely already suspect murder, witchcraft, insanity abound from the set details, but what isn't clear is what is or is not abstracted away through the dance. The first surprise from the residents is their movement. This isn't a Christmas pageant scene with residents pantomiming their various sets. They move. Running across warehouses, flying up and down stairs, darting through crowds. Scenes are so much more intense knowing the residents aren't in any way restricted to any particular space. You can't let your guard down just based on the setting. Anything could happen. Then the scenes become more visceral. The residents are covered in water or blood, and visitors can easily be in the splash zone. These flurries of action contrast with the more voyeuristic feel of the quieter, more private scenes. A woman lighting a candle in a small room, a man writing a letter, two women styling their hair in a small carriage with room for only 2 or 3 visitors. These moments feel more personal and intimate than the more traditionally voyeuristic viewings of nudity and simulated sex in other scenes. Even the most lurid of witch orgies in Hecat's bar never feels gratuitous exactly, because the experience is so strongly narratively driven. They're not lingering for the gaze of the observer. It's more a rousing celebration of wickedness. Overall, watching the residents is so dynamic. Scenes can collide, other residents followed by visitors can run past. It's hard to follow a coherent thread, and it's easier to just let the movement take you where you please. This is a story for your gut, after all. Before I went to Sleep No More, I already had a lot of anticipation for the more mysterious and unpredictable facet, the rare private encounters. I mentioned there is a rule that the visitors are not to disturb the residents, but there is an exception, when the resident initiates. Residents may whisper a special task to you, such as sneaking a key to another resident, or even pull you off into a secret room for a private scene. If you're the lucky person who gets shoved off the elevator, you get to explore the entire floor alone, except for the residents who may interact with you. The usual boundary between residents and visitors makes these spell-breaking interactions all the more special. A one-on-one encounter in a theater is a profound experience, a communion of the observer with the art. This desire for intimacy within art is what drives so many people to return. When I talk to people who have been to Sleep No More, the topic that always comes up is the private encounter they, or someone they know, had. Rumors of small gifts coughed up by a resident, or a quiet moonlit dance build up a mythos of possibilities beyond the regular performance. When do these encounters happen? How do the residents choose? For those who are not satisfied with mythos and desire facts, There's a subreddit and a Discord. Of course. Folks have code names for these secret encounters and discuss ways to be in the right place at the right time to be chosen. But it's not that simple. The residents can smell desperation. The most striking feast of immersion is absolutely the vibes. The setting of the hotel is simply immaculately created. I could go many times with no actors just to experience the space. The visuals are so coherent and interesting. There are over 100 rooms, and each is furnished exquisitely to match the sophisticated and haunting aesthetic. Different floors have different themes, from a small village, complete with a taxidermist, a detective agency, and various storefronts, to a sanatorium level with a forested maze and graveyard. The depth of detail is immense. The detective agency has files and books you can read through to learn more about the Paisley story. The hospital area has multiple beds with fully fleshed out patient charts you can browse. After each room was designed and built, an additional detail designer would go in and pull a painting off the wall and write a secret on the back, or hide strange items in drawers. Everything is interactable, and so much is tactile. Jars filled with traditional British candies in the sweet shop you're free to snack on. Working typewriters with cryptic clues or forlorn poems you can add to. Animals in the taxidermy's shop I saw someone petting. Like Saga and Alan Wake 2. But none of the visuals would be half as compelling without the lighting. The light is actually designed to create darkness, not illumination. And it does an excellent job shrouding the objects and passages in a single room so dimly, to fully explore you have to get close. The soundscape is also elaborate. Even on the same floor, there are multiple sound zones that peak in certain locations and then quietly merge with each other on the perimeters. The lighting and sound work together give strong contrast between different areas of the hotel. The warm glow of the chandeliers in the hotel lobby with old jazz records, the harsh white moonlight playing strange shadows in the birch forest, accompanied by unsettling ambient tones. The old neon sign lights of Hecat's bar with heavily distorted Tony Bennett. I kept being reminded of BioShock. The vibes are just perfect, but that's easy to see. What's going on under the surface? It's hard to think of a story that would work as well for this experience as a spin on Shakespeare's play Macbeth.
I thought I heard a voice cry, "Sleep no more. Macbeth does murder sleep." Oh, the innocent sleep. Sleep that knits up the raveled sleeve of care, the death of each day's life, sore labor's bath.
What do you mean?
Still it cries, "Sleep no more," to all the house. Macbeth shall sleep no more.
To capture the dreamlike, haunted tone, you need dark deeds and strong vibes. What better than a story with themes of envy, madness, paranoia, guilt?
I go, and it is done. The bell invites me. Hear it not, Duncan, for 'tis a knell that summons thee to heaven. Or to hell.
A story that is old and profound brings a convenient gravity to it, even if the audience hasn't seen Macbeth. Most folks would recognize the name as a dark Shakespearean tragedy. Guests might not know that Sleep No More is related to Macbeth going in, but there are visuals mentioning Macbeth. Just seeing the word Macbeth written on a set piece is pleasantly grounding, given what must seem like just abject chaos without that context. To make the large, sprawling space of the hotel work well, you need a large cast of interesting characters and compelling settings and visuals. Not to spoil Macbeth for anyone, but there are blood-covered ghosts, violent murders, witchcraft rituals, a man who was from his mother's womb untimely ripped.
I am no man.
Macbeth has a fairly large cast, but is also fairly unique amongst older and more well-known works, in the strong and compelling women's roles of Lady Macbeth and the witches. It's hard to imagine something like Hamlet working quite as well. Macbeth is merged with the Paisley witch trials, which I kind of assume even fewer people are familiar with, but it's a convenient way to add even more characters and scenes that still fit within the same spooky vibe. Sets can be used by residents from both substories, and there's a lot more mystery trying to figure out who the residents are, which is fun. Also, not to nerd out on Macbeth facts, I'll save that for after the credits, But Macbeth is very short for a Shakespearean tragedy. It's theorized that the original play is lost, and what we have is actually a quattro, or prompt book for actors. So now we get to the more subtle design, which you might not notice when you go, but this invisible design is key to making the experience what it is. The mask you're required to wear during the performance allows you to act authentically and experience the show how you want. I put a fake mustache on mine and I can't get it off, so I had to borrow a friend's. It gives you anonymity. You can leave any scene at any time, look at whatever you want, no one is going to judge you. You get to create your own narrative by following whichever residents you find most interesting. Or pet a taxidermied deer. Follow your impulses. You're also very likely to lose whoever you went with, because the mask really covers your head and it's too dark to identify people's clothes. I'm sure I must have passed my friends multiple times, but I never noticed them after we split up. Losing your friends is absolutely a feature. Not only can you now go at your own pace, but your experiences will branch and you'll have incredible conversations describing your narratives. The mask also really helps with immersion. The sides of the mask kind of force a cinematic lens. It actually makes it easy to ignore the audience, since the sea of white masks kind of disappears. You can have your own authentic response. No facial expressions from others to hint to your brain how to feel. Much like Igor Stravinsky's The Rite of Spring, the resident's mayhem seems to be spinning wildly around you, but that level of chaos can only exist without falling apart, due to the tightly underlying structure.
Every single beat, even though it feels like it's a flippant bit of improvisation, a brush, a glance, is set. And it kind of has to be, because otherwise the whole thing the performers will have a lot of power, and so do the audience, and that battle would shift and throw it off balance.
The background music as well as the various sound cues keep everything on track. The rigidity of the performer's choreography not only allows for the wild, out-of-control feeling, but also protects the performers and the audience. The audience is also unknowingly part of the choreography. There are scenes of dashing, leaping, wild dance moves that the stage managers, or black masks, enable by standing in just the right place to unconsciously nudge the audience away from the path the performer will take. This maneuvering of the audience is what allows these incredible displays of athleticism to look so impulsive and mad. Even in the less wild scenes, residents will look dramatically in a direction before heading that way, allowing the audience to move out of the way. They are telegraphing their intentions, but it feels natural. The audience is like a fluid that is repelled from the movements of the actors. So we've talked about how the choreography moves the audience around. The black-masked hotel staff make space, the residents telegraph their movements, but the larger plot and scenes themselves are designed to manipulate the audience into being in the best possible space for immersion. Although the hotel itself is massive, it offers a wide variety of room sizes and spaces. Each small group of visitors enter from the elevator in the middle of the first time loop of the performance, in the middle of the action. It wouldn't do for the next group of visitors to stumble into the first group, trying to exit the elevator, so the residents will move the first group away from the entrance, naturally leading the visitors deeper into the hotel. The ideal experience is for the 400 visitors to be roughly divided between the 25 residents. When two residents interact, they merge their followers, requiring a larger space to accommodate them. Now this is obviously approximate, as many visitors explore independently, but the goal is probably to have somewhere between 8 to 20 visitors following any one resident. So how do you actually make that happen? It's not as easy as you would think. People tend to act as a group and have similar preferences. I observed a few common rules that visitors often instinctually follow. When a resident moves, visitors tend to follow them. If two residents split up, visitors often follow the more engaging or dramatic one. When a resident leaves a group scene, most visitors remain with a larger group. It's weirdly hard to leave in the middle of the action. Now the problem with these instinctual rules is that if everyone follows them, and everyone's following their gut, you'll end up with an increasingly large cluster of visitors all hanging around the same resident, probably just following Lady Macbeth around, because how could you not? But that's not a great time, because once the crowd is too large, it becomes visible again. It breaks the immersion trying to step around people to see. So how do you get people to do different things? By creating conflicts that challenge these instinctive rules, so audience members will make various different choices. Imagine, for example, a scene with 4 residents in a large room, 3 relatively uninteresting characters, and a raging, blood-soaked Lady Macbeth. How do you end the scene such that all 4 residents get roughly an equal amount of followers? If all the residents left at the same time, too many residents would follow Lady Macbeth. If a boring resident just saunters off in the middle of the action, potentially no one will follow. They solve this kind of scenario by having Lady Macbeth walk off briskly in the middle of the scene while action is still happening between the other 3 characters. The tension to stay and see the conclusion of the scene is enough that most people will stay, but the pull of Lady Macbeth is enough that some people will follow. The scene design for popular residents employs various tactics to manage the massive cluster of followers problem. Firstly, they run, and I mean book it, from time to time, so it's easy to lose them in the dark maze of the hotel. They also do this thing where they'll run into the dark stairwell that connects each of the floors, and dart up or down the stairs at around the same time that another, less interesting resident and their followers show up. The timing for this lining up goes back to the tight choreography. So many people will enter the stairwell, and there's no line of sight, so it's intentionally easy to lose the popular resident in the chaos. They also tend to be harder to find. Their scenes are farther away from the main thoroughfares. Another trick is just to have plenty of short visitors like me wearing flat, practical shoes for running around, so they can't see what's happening and decide to go somewhere else. There are also costume design strategies to make less plot-pivotal characters visually interesting to attract visitors unfamiliar with the story. Minor characters such as nurses in distinctive uniforms or grumpy bartenders often have more visually coherent appearances and their own intriguing scenes. If you don't even know who Macbeth is, a suspicious-looking maid might be more likely to capture your attention than some random guy. The largest space is the massive ballroom, which holds the banquet scene that marks the end of each loop and the grand finale. The ballroom is 2 stories where, like a theater, there's a stage, a ballroom floor, and a mezzanine. All 400 visitors could probably fit on the ballroom floor, but the mezzanine offers a better view of the banquet stage despite being somewhat farther away. Each of the residents' scenes towards the end of a loop funnels guests back to the ballroom. Each resident leaves their followers at a different place, either on part of the mezzanine or side of the ballroom floor, naturally creating a comfortable viewing experience for everyone. One last note on the secret passageways. One of my favorite moments of the night was in my first loop. I had been following a woman through multiple scenes, but she abruptly ducked into a passage I couldn't follow. The few followers and I looked around bewildered. What now? I had followed this woman through twists and turns of multiple stories. I looked around and passages headed out in every direction as far as I could see. There were no nearby scenes or other groups of visitors. I was completely lost. But in such an incredible space, such an environment to explore, with atmospheric, haunting music all around me, I felt giddy. I no longer had to watch a performance. In that moment, I could explore to my heart's content. Dig through the drawers, read journals, immerse myself with the space. Eventually, I stumbled upon another resident scene that piqued my curiosity, but that moment of being utterly lost is a thrill I'll never forget. Before you're released from the elevator in the beginning, the bellhop declares, "Fortune favors the bold." The time-looping structure of Sleep No More allows for a compelling shift in the way the audience is experiencing the performance. This shift can happen midway through the evening. The first loop, most visitors are likely lost in the spectacle, letting it wash over them. And that's a valid way to experience the entire performance. But if you're someone like me who loves mysteries, the realization of the looping structure is a thrilling opportunity to take back agency. The experience becomes interactive. The banquet between the loops becomes an anchor point, and you can start to predict where and when certain key scenes will happen. Spoilers to the 1606 play Macbeth. I realized shortly after the first banquet scene, with Banquo's ghost, that the show was looping. Exciting! I decided I had to see Macbeth murder King Duncan. In the first loop, I had watched the scene where Lady Macbeth convinces Duncan to murder the king, but Macbeth runs out of the room and into the stairwell really fast, so I stayed with Lady Macbeth. The second loop, I anticipated the time the scene would happen and waited in the stairwell. Macbeth came flying out, and I followed him across the hotel and got to watch him commit his foul deed. This was very satisfying. It was a very short scene that would have been easy to miss. Then, at the end of the second banquet, I really wanted to know how the witches transformed from sophisticated party attire to disheveled and covered in blood, especially since that wasn't really part of Macbeth. The third loop, I tried to keep track of them, but lost them at some point to a secret passage. So instead, I spent time wandering the floors, watching parts of various scenes to plan my fourth loop. Sadly, there was to be no fourth loop, and the finale kinda caught me by surprise. The shift of passivity to empowerment gained by the time loop structure was so compelling to me. A self-guided personal quest was so fun to attempt in this environment. The looping structure encourages an investigative mindset, allowing you to predict and discover scenes and events. The elaborate sets invite exploration, with hidden details and clues scattered throughout. You can look through drawers for details and hints, try to find secret passages open to visitors, or even just try to figure out the higher level story by identifying and following the main characters. The set of the hotel is designed for intrigue. Certain areas have maze-like structures where you can see a strange scene happening from a window or aperture, but it's not easy to get there to follow the action, so you can plan a better route for the next loop. The lighting and color palettes help navigate the space. The experience leaves you wanting more loops, and I think that's a good thing. It keeps the mystique of the possibility space alive. Sleep No More feels dynamic and alive and unvanquished, and in case you can't tell by now, it holds a special place in my heart and memory. So I've clearly had a lot of good things to say about Sleep No More's design, but I would be remiss in not mentioning the bad design. You give people alcohol, dark environments, occasionally nude performers, a mask, and tell them fortune favors the bold. Most people will have a great time because they recognize the performers and staff as fellow humans and can respect their boundaries. Some people will assault the performers. A 2018 exposé by BuzzFeed News details multiple instances of performers and staffers being sexually assaulted by audience members. Those performers currently employed at the time had to speak anonymously due to non-disclosure agreements, as well as fear of reprisal. The past employees were willing to be named. Now, there are many concerns about how the management handled clear instances of sexual assault, such as having the perpetrator wait in the bar, letting the perpetrator back up to the performance, allowing the perpetrator to come back over and over again to multiple performances. But I'm going to focus on the design. How can we preserve the meaningful art that is immersive theater, with all its nudity, without creating a perfect breeding ground for assault? The first problem. Originally, the audience wasn't explicitly told not to touch the performers, just fortune favors the bold. It wasn't until after BuzzFeed's 2018 article that a line was added to the elevator BuzzHop script, keep a respectful distance from the performers. So, yeah. Duh. But I would argue that even before the drinks and steps towards immersion, there could be an even clearer, blunter warning. The scary bouncer who lets you in from the line outside could say something like, "You have a wonderful evening ahead of you, but I'm going to take this opportunity to remind you the hotel has a strict no physical contact policy, no touching the performers. Doing so will result in your immediate removal and potential charges. We take our staff's safety very seriously. Now welcome to the hotel. Adventure awaits." I don't know, I'm not a writer. But I would argue that maybe, as a woman, that might even elevate my experience, because I would go in feeling comfortable that the performers were safe. I could feel good about enjoying myself in a way that I wouldn't at, like, a random strip club. The other major issue was the design of the incident handling. Protocol was that if an audience member acted inappropriately to any degree, that a performer would pull off their mask and alert the stage managers to escort them out. The problem with this was that the performer couldn't communicate the severity of the act, just mask on or mask off. A mask removal was the same signal for both a possible accidental contact that would justify a stern word of warning and a return to the performance, or clear assault justifying at minimal the guest's removal. I kinda get not wanting to break immersion for the other guests, but I would argue that people would prefer the safety of performers to perfect immersion. It's not the performer ruining your night by taking an extra second to communicate with the stage managers. It's the visitor who did something shitty. Besides, if this is also tightly choreographed, couldn't the performer have a few different hand signals to indicate generally what happened? Adding that to the mask pull isn't that disruptive. One thing I did notice when I went April 2024 was that all scenes that I saw involving nudity had stage managers on hand, sometimes more than one. I didn't know about the BuzzFeed article at the time, but I remember appreciating that because of the empathetic stress of not wanting some drunk person to be a weirdo. I get having more well-trained staff is expensive, but I'm hoping in the year of our Lord 2024, we're all on the same page that most people in the audience really genuinely care about performer safety and well-being. I assume in the price of my ticket is the cost of both the enjoyment of the art and the protection of the artists. So yeah, I shouldn't have to say this, but please design for performer and staff safety and well-being. Sleep No More will soon be no more. It seems the show is ending in large part because of finances. The show was initially scheduled to end in January, which a producer for Immersive, the organization that took the show over from the UK theater company Punch Drunk, told the New York Times was due to rising production costs. It has also had landlord trouble with suits and countersuits over permits, rent, the warehouse is an astronomical $438,000 a month, and breach of contract. Sleep No More needs to be in New York City to have enough consistent demand to keep the show running, given the cost to run it. Not to mention access to the levels of talent needed to hire the performers. My ticket in April was $190, which honestly isn't bad compared to a lot of concert tickets. but I could see how raising the ticket cost might hurt demand for a show that's been running for over a decade. It also obviously can't tour because it's built into the space. It wouldn't be Sleep No More without the McKittrick Hotel. Though it is currently slated to close September 29th, its run has been extended multiple times since its original closing date, January 2024. So we'll see. If you have the opportunity and means though, I mean, yeah, I'd recommend it. The company Immersive, who took the show over from Punch Drunk, launched a new, even larger immersive theater production called Life and Trust, based on Faustian legends. I've purposefully avoided reading too much because I like to go into these immersive experiences as blind as possible, but Faust seems like a reasonable successor for Macbeth, if a little light on familiar characters. I'm personally really excited about the future of immersive experiences, specifically the human interaction element. I believe there is a growing significance in artist and audience interactions in an age of increasing isolation and AI-generated art. The churches were the art centers of their day. They provided a very rich sensory experience, from the art to the music to the physicality of being there. The idea that you could experience a transcendent shared reality outside the ordinary has long been not just an aesthetic phenomenon, but a spiritual one. One that seems all the more necessary in an era where many of us live in artificial urban environments, disconnected from nature, from our bodies, from spirit. I'm lucky to live fairly close to Meow Wolf in Denver, a vast interactive installation, vaguely like a sci-fi Sleep No More without the residents. I've enjoyed my visits. The entry folks are actors, which is fun, but once you walk into the installation, you're on your own. It ends up feeling more like a video game, interacting with static art, which isn't a bad thing. But what Sleep No More does so well is to give me the dynamic feeling that I'm part of it, part of the show, part of the experience. I'm using the structure of the show to craft my own narrative, stories I can tell people later. Sleep No More is intensely human. It highlights some of our strongest emotions and makes us feel alive. But it only works so well because of all of the thoughtful design and intention that went into its creation. I hope that future artists continue to iterate on these systems that work so well, and build more opportunities to let us appreciate being alive and human. Thanks for watching. Bonus Macbeth facts. So Macbeth was likely written by Shakespeare to curry favor with the new king, King James. Macbeth was likely written as a celebration, either of King James of Scotland's ascension to the English throne, uniting the kingdom, or a celebration of the failure of the gunpowder plot's attempted regicide and warning to future usurpers. It's really a play written for King James. I did another video on this, but King James hated witches. He thought they were out to get him, and he wrote an entire philosophical dissertation on contemporary necromancy called Demonology. So Shakespeare threw some witches in as villains. Great. James also believed himself to be descended from the historical Banquo, so Shakespeare adds the line of prophecy that Banquo will beget kings. Ho ho ho. Also, if you happen to be a fan of Lady Macbeth, I highly recommend the opera Lady Macbeth of the Minsk District by Shostakovich. It's dark and haunting in all the right ways.